Good evening, everybody. Today is February 16th, 2022. However, if you're watching this video, it's more than likely February 17th, 2022, and that's because I felt cheeky and thought I could sneak in a bit of a battle replay before today is officially over. So, hello tomorrow, and here's from today. The mod, as you know... Where did they go? Oh yeah, deploy them over there. Cool. Anyway, the mod, getting back to that, is Napoleon Darthmod Hardcore Realism. The map is the Battle of Albuera, which is based off of a historical battle which occurred in 1810 during the Napoleonic Wars, specifically in Spain. It's made by the NTW3 mod team. They do a great job on their maps, and they're integrated into Darthmod Hardcore Realism. They just do such a fantastic job, and as always... if we're going to use some stuff from another mod, we may as well plug it. NTW3 is a fantastic game. They have an incredible amount of detail, very historically accurate. A little different than what I would prefer. I like Darthmod Hardcore. It's just a little more... it's just a little more cinematic to me, and I'm a bit of a junkie for that. But if you like attention to detail, NTW3 is where it's at. Anyway... let's talk about the battle. So, the Battle of Albuera was a fascinating battle, primarily because it was basically a context or a situation created by a lack of complete information. Soult essentially was engaging the Allied army, which, as you can see, consisted of the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the British. And by the way, this is an attempt to loosely recreate the battle, so there was actually, in reality, a British, a Spanish, and a Portuguese contingent at the battle, fighting against a predominantly French army with some Polish elements. Specifically, it was the French Armée du Midi, which I've probably mispronounced, and I'm so sorry. But anyway, Soult did not have complete information as to the Allied army's whereabouts. He thought he was engaging, I think, I could be wrong, but if I recall correctly, he believed himself to be engaging a smaller force. As it turns out, he was engaging an army of 34 and change thousand with only a French army of a little less than 25,000. So, outnumbered by basically 50%, the French basically gave it as good as they got it. The casualties were relatively equal, all things considered. The French acquitted themselves rather well given the circumstances, and just went to go and prove that even in moments of great adversity, the French were never really toothless. They knew how to fight, and by thunder they did. The year was 1810. The Napoleonic Wars, one of the most cataclysmic events, nay, periods in European history, would continue for another 5 years following this battle. Not to say that this battle would have concluded the Napoleonic Wars had it been won, but it is to say it is simply yet another in a long list of bloody and unfortunate battles which happened in Europe. So anyway, let's discuss this map. Let's get down to the details here. Tonight's drink of choice, there's always got to be one, is Twinings Lady Grey Decaffeinated Tea. I'll pause the game briefly as I talk about it. Everybody should go find themselves a glass of water, pull up a beer, make some coffee, have a glass of water, stay hydrated. It's 2022. COVID's still happening. It's insane. There's too much going on in the world right now, guys. You got to relax, make sure you get enough sleep, get vaccinated. It's real. It's out there. Take care of yourself. Have a good time. And on that note, I say this predominantly because I've actually been receiving quite a significant number of comments from people on the YouTube channels and videos, I should say, complimenting me on the style of video I produce. And with that note in mind, if I recall correctly, the channel is now sitting at more than 50 subscribers and probably close to, nearing 3,000 views. When I started this channel, I thought it was basically going to be me engaging in the rantings of a madman, projecting into the void my crazy thoughts about the Napoleonic Wars and linear warfare and just how much I love video games like this. I didn't anticipate people would enjoy it this much. But as it turns out, people do, and that is extremely gratifying to hear. As I've said and will continue to say, this is a passion project. I just do what I want, and that's, I think, what I'm trying to say here is it's a privilege and an honor to have people say that they appreciate and like what I do, because I'm not doing this to please you, as possibly insulting as that may sound. I'm doing it in the way that I'm doing it because this is how I like doing it, and it just means so damn much that people enjoy the way that I want to do it, because I think there's a really big difference in the quality of content you produce when you want to do it a certain way versus the style of content you produce when you're trying to please people. And I really cannot say enough about how much I appreciate and enjoy, and again, I'm honored by the fact that people really seem to be liking what I'm doing. And you know what? If if listening to the rantings of a madman is what makes you have a good night, then, well, you're in the right channel for that. So anyway, let's get back to the battlefield. Battle of Albuera, which is this town right here, gives us the advantage in terms of defense. We've got Albuera off this main road, and then we have this other house, which is that Casa del Conde? I believe so. So we have a point here, we have a point here, and then the French have their own one point all the way back here, basically on this highway. So this highway really is what the battle's about, if you think about it, right? Because one point is here, one point is there, and another point is back here. Looking at the way the Allies deploy, we have the British back here, who are going to be coming in later in the battle by how far away they are. We have the Spanish, who are here, very clearly going to garrison the town of Albuera. And then we have the Portuguese, a.k.a. me. I was the Portuguese in this game, and that's why I think it's a fun one, because I fought it. However, to give you a little bit of a spoiler, I did want to show this one because I've been showing a lot of replays with me in them where I win, or I do really, really well. I specifically want to show this replay because I don't do well. In fact, I get basically torn to pieces. You'll see why, and I'm not going to spoil it. It is very spectacular how I die. I did survive somewhat, but it's pretty crazy. So I think this is a great showcase of, you know, you can know what you're doing, but still make a mistake. And boy, do I make mistakes. Anywho, that's our deployment. Now, there's a problem here. Because if you consider where the enemy's deploying, they deploy inside these white boxes, and these boxes are white because these are basically areas of denial where we cannot deploy our guerrilla cavalry. Spain, in version 3 of Darthmod Hardcore Realism, all of their light cavalry can guerrilla deploy to represent that guerrilla element in the Peninsular War. So you could see the Spanish player, who's Dan. Dan is a fun guy to play with, has put his cavalry into the enemy's rear. That is not innuendo, it's just a fact. And they're also in a wood line, so they're very difficult to spot. Wood lines give additional stealth bonus to units that are within them. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the enemy have their head on a swivel. The French and the Polish will be looking over their shoulders constantly throughout this battle to make sure that they're not getting charged in the rear by some cheeky guerrilla cavalry. Now, there's another added benefit to this as well, which is the guerrilla cavalry in the enemy's rear will be feeding us consistently accurate information about where the enemy is. And it will become quite apparent once deployment is concluded how valuable that information is. But the real threat here, strategically, if you think about it, is all three French armies, well, the two French and the one Polish army, are starting online. They're roughly parallel to each other. Meanwhile, the Spanish are here and I'm really far forward if you look at it from this perspective. Look at how much further I am. And then there's the Spanish player back here. So I'm the furthest. Then there's the Spanish. And the Brits are all the way back here. Look at this distance. If I need reinforcement, it's going to be a long time coming. Now, the good news is if you look at from this top-down view, the French and the Poles have to march across this river, which is only fordable at a few points. There's this ford here. There is this ford here. Most of this marshy area, this glen, is a fordable area. There's some fords over here. There's a ford here. And there's also a ford here, if I recall correctly. So there's a few crossings, but by and large, this river is too deep to be crossed. So there are several key crossings that we can defend to prevent the enemy from coming up and across. However, that is not the plan on my side. My plan is to use this ridgeline and to deploy batteries on these hills to my front. Because if we look at this sign, for example, look at what a commanding view this hill has over all of this. And then if we go over here to this side, on this signpost, look at what a commanding view this has. And the enemy Polish player will deploy here, and the French will deploy here. These two hills dominate the landscape and are vital to the effect any artillery is going to have on the battle. Now, from a defensive standpoint, let's analyze the map a little bit further. We have several rivers which are going to help us delay the enemy. We have this first one, obviously. Then we have these little tributaries, these creeks, that are going to force the enemy to either do a slow assault to the front, or I should say, what is that? Well, if we look at the camera, if this side is east. So if we're looking this way, we're looking at the east. That means this way is north. So this is the north side of Albuera. It's going to force the enemy to move even further to the northwest quadrant of the map to try to circumvent that. So the enemy over here, if they so choose to attack this way, is going to have to march uphill, probably under artillery fire, towards the British. Meanwhile, over here, if things get too hairy, we could pull back behind this river, and then pull back behind this river, and then this one, and this one, and then this one, and then use this one. We have all of these waterways, these water features, to form defensive lines upon, to thwart the effectiveness of assaults. It's going to be very tricky for the enemy team to do an effective thrust that carries far because of the way the terrain is. But don't you worry, you'll see some shit fly. Anyway, let's let the battle play a little bit so you can kind of observe the terrain a little bit more on your own time. Oh, I'm a fool. I haven't talked about the army compositions yet. To be very quick, I only have standard cavalry. The Portuguese did not have heavy cavalry, so I have 4 regular cavalry regiments with 2 very good ones. The 10th Santarem Cavalry Regiment was good, and the 1st Alcantara Cavalry Regiment was very good. My army is led by Luis de Rego Barreto, which I don't know why I said that with a slightly Italian accent, but I regret nothing. And of course, I have 2 British 9-pounders. The Portuguese army was basically trained and equipped by the British army at this point in the war, so it's basically a discount British army. I have some cazadores, of course, tiradores. I've got a bunch of line, as well as a good seasoned backbone of Lusitanian Legion, 6th Infantry Regiment Grenadiers, and the 1st Lisbon Infantry, or Lisboa Infanteria, however they might have said it. I'm not too sure. I'm kind of making that up, admittedly. Don't cancel me. But anyway, on the Spanish side, we have such a beautiful lineup. The Spanish army in this period is truly beautiful to look at. They've got tons of uniform diversity, and in the mod they have such amazing flavor because they have tons of named units with awesome stories. They have these Guitares Musketeers, a 3-pound battery. Spanish artillery was very powerful. I'll pause the game for a second while I go over armies. Spanish artillery was very good in this period. They had a phrase called a la muerte, which means to the death, and that was kind of the motto of the Spanish gunners. It was probably the best part of their army, arguably. And they really fought tooth and nail, and they would indeed fight to the death. So these guns are very stalwart, and you'll see that later in the battle. That will become apparent. Meanwhile, they have a bunch of named units, so they've got a ton of line infantry. They're led by Joaquin, I'm not sure, Blake y Hoyes. I could be mispronouncing that. Again, I regret nothing. Then they have a lovely corps of very good units. They've got a battalion of the Walloon Guards, who have such a fantastic uniform. I don't know if that's period correct or not, but it just looks cool. They have Spanish Marines, always a fun, flavorful unit. And of course, perhaps one of my favorite units in the mod, the Saragossa Legion, named for the town where the siege of Zaragoza happened, one of the most incredible stories during the Peninsular Campaign of the Napoleonic Wars. Absolutely harrowing story of siege warfare during the Napoleonic Wars. I would encourage everyone to take a moment to read about it. It is a fascinating story. The Siege of Saragossa, spelled with Z-A-R-G-O-Z-A, if I recall correctly. There's numerous spellings. There's an anglicized version. There's the Spanish version. But it just, if you go by the name that's in the mod, it can be accurate. So Saragossa Legion, Siege of Saragossa, it'll pop up. So they have got a 9-pound battery as well as some grenadiers in the back. So that's kind of them. Meanwhile, the British have a very fun army. They've got a bunch of light cavalry and some of the most flavorful units, or squadrons, in this type of battle. 2 squadrons of KGL Dragoons. KGL Dragoons during the Napoleonic Wars, specifically in the Peninsular Wars, were quite good. They were some of the more seasoned cavalry squadrons within the British Army. In fact, KGL Dragoons broke 2 squares of French infantry, one after the other in rapid succession during one battle in the Peninsular Wars. I could tell you more about that later, but it's not that important right now to the story. Suffice to say, KGL Dragoons are rather good. They have 2 9-pound batteries, very standard British artillery, 15th and 10th Hussars. Then they have a just general mix of infantry. There's a bunch of good infantry in here. If I recall correctly, there is they've got 3rd Foot Guards, they've got 80th Connaught Rangers, they have a bunch of Highland Foot, KGL Foot, 42nd Black Watch, they've got the 95th Rifles, because also, if you are playing in Spain, and you are playing British, and you don't take Sean Bean, I will cry. So, of course, the 95th were taken, and they're all led by Major General Picton. The British player was rather new to the mod, so he's not quite sure where to go, but he does a great job. So you're going to see a little bit of strange activity on the British player's side. Don't inflame him. There was a lot going on. Anyway, as you could see, from our scout cavalry in the rear, our guerrillas instantly giving us information on where the enemy is. Let's have a look at the Polish side. He has 2 brigades of light infantry moving forward to screen the main army, moving at the quick march. As you can see, they're not running. That's just the natural movement speed of them. He's got a 7-pound howitzer to help bombard that hill. Meanwhile, a bunch of great cavalry, 2 squadrons of cuirassiers, a bunch of lancers. There's 9th Lancers on the right flank, which is a very good Polish lancer unit. This is a very potent army. This is how many squadrons of cavalry? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 2 more over here. 7, 8, not too sure, because they might have disappeared due to line of sight. Half the Polish army is on horseback. It's insane. Ney on the left flank, Soult on the right flank. And you can see the problem here. And I did not see it. I thought I was on the defensive. I was on the hill. I had a good position. I had artillery embedded in my line. I was relatively confident in my ability to hold my side. I thought the French would take longer to come online. I thought the British would move a little faster, perhaps. And I pay very dearly for that. Now, there's a mistake I'm making here, and I'm going to point it out to you because it's important to understand. My artillery is basically parallel to each other facing this way. If I lose one gun, there's a damn good chance I'm going to lose the other gun for my placement. What I learned from this game is don't have your batteries parallel, because if you lose them on one part of the line, you're probably going to lose them on the other part of the line. Now, granted, this was a fantastic position. Look at the Portuguese. Well, yeah, the Portuguese are in front. But look at the Polish coming on. That's a beautiful sight. That is truly a spectacle. I got to take a screenshot of that. Wow. Spanish scout cavalry being sent, fleeing from the forest. Fortunately, some friendly fire on my side kills a trooper. But what a fantastic line of sight I have. As the Spanish move in line, they'll deploy a 9-pound battery on this wonderful hill. Excellent commanding position. But the Poles have secured this ford crossing. They're here. Maybe it would have been smarter to be further down. Hold them back a little bit. I'm going to try to pummel their cavalry with my artillery. But we still don't know where the bulk of the enemy's army is. Look at how aggressively I was deployed right up to this road. I was really trying to hold this position. I'll put stakes down here as well, to give this battery on this hill a little more coverage. And the stakes are down low enough to where I can actually fire canister down from this position. It's a very good angle. Meanwhile, I'm already getting creamed by a howitzer, suffering significant counter battery. Whoa. Giving it better than I'm getting it from the light infantry. Can't say the same for the howitzer. But I'm going to try to counter battery this 7-pound howitzer down a little bit. Now I'll miss, but I'm definitely going to hit some of this light cavalry with my other battery while it's crossing. Meanwhile, the French, we can see where they are now because they're close enough, and the Spanish scout cavalry on the right has identified them. 3 squadrons of cuirassiers, very good cavalry, and they are very clearly moving to ford the river. So it is very apparent they're going to make an attempt on the Spanish extreme left. The British, blessedly, are marching down the road now, and they have almost all of their cavalry deployed to my right to provide flank security right up to the edge of the map. Still trying to nail this 7-pound battery. 7-pound howitzer. I should have been shooting at the infantry. I was trying to do something to it, but unfortunately not. Oh, pardon me. Good, my sound channels are all the way up. Excellent. Just had to make sure you were getting the full audio experience of the game. This Polish player, whose name is Roland, he's very good. He's got a bunch of 2 chevroned line infantry forming his reserve as the light infantry leads the way. A very powerful assault. Meanwhile, the French columns are beginning to move up on the right, but they're not going to move up for free. Because now I'm thinking, okay, that's the prime artillery target. Let's take shots at him. Let's watch the bombardment for a little bit, because it is truly a spectacle to behold. This is what artillery should be shooting at. Massed battalions of men marching in an open, an open field. Optimal range, clear line of sight. The only thing blocking our vision is our own clouds of smoke. Let's see what the effect of the fire is. Oh, nothing so far. Nothing so far. Don't worry, we'll zero in. Meanwhile, over here, small panic attacks. All right, let's go back to this position. Let's see what the effect of the fire is going to be with this next volley. Whoa. Damn good hit. Look at that. Jesus. How many ranks do we have in this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, look at that. Just clean through the center of that Polish legion. Now, he's got Dragoons at Piedges, which is a great unit, very narrative, because the Dragoons were the anti-guerrilla patrol, basically, of the French army in this theater of war, in the Peninsular War. But they don't have bayonets, but they do have carbines, so they fire rather swiftly. You can see the lines deploying here. And so the Polish assault steps off. Oh, man, this battery is really tearing him up. Portuguese Legion, a bunch of French sympathizing Portuguese coming up against me. Oh, somebody's got to hit something. But the Poles are moving too quickly up this hill for me to contain them. Look, they came out of the woods. They're moving up. And this is where my problems begin. Because rather than engaging me and giving me time to shoot at him, he's not going to do that. Now, I am going to get some damn good canister off. But here's the problem. Look, I'm fighting 2 armies. I've got the French to my right. I've got the Poles here. He's fighting the French here. He's trying to lend me support. But it's just not going to happen. We don't have enough stuff going on. And this cavalry charge will represent the beginning of a very sad series of events for the Portuguese. French assault on the right. Runs right into stakes. Canister is going to rout the rest of this unit. Wow. And that's how you instantly nuke 65 French hussars. My own cavalry is going to move in to try to cover them for a little bit while the gun reloads. But now my micro's broken up. I don't really have the ability to square this Lusitanians. That's a very expensive unit to not have square. I'm getting pressed real hard. The Poles are going to try to push a breakthrough in the center of my line. I'll countercharge with my Lisbon infantry. Try to kill off these French dragoons. Again, they don't have bayonets. I do. So I should be killing these guys. And I am, as you can see. The stats are favoring me, but this howitzer fire is merciless. My guns don't have a good target really anywhere. On this side, meanwhile, Roland, who's the Polish player, moving very aggressively into the gap. I was here. Now I'm not. I did have a battery here. Now I don't. Canister fire just a second too late. Would have been better to save that canister to maybe shoot at this unit of, or this massive blob of cuirassiers and lancers. Now I do get the vast majority of the crew off the gun, trying to run desperately to the square. Some of them do get in. Some of them do make it to the safety of the square, but half the unit, half the gun crew is dead. I'm trying to get a bit of a retreat off here. I'm trying to hold this line to give the British player time to get on. As you can see, he's moving, but it might be a little too late for that. If this French player decides to step off, I can get swamped real fast, and it's not going to be good. This massive reserve of French cuirassier cavalry, more than 100 cuirassiers sitting in less than 300 feet of space. Meanwhile, the French are attempting to outflank the Spanish extreme left, getting bombarded the whole way. Crossing this other ford, trying to make a line. You can see how slowly they're moving, but they're taking casualties the whole way through, as now the Spanish line has begun erupting. And I'm retreating out of the way of the British line as they're going to get to their destination. That will free up basically a brigade of troops for me. And this is where I'm going to try to hold for a little bit. But you could see the Poles just have this unstoppable wave of infantry coming in to reinforce their cavalry charge up the center. This is a great way to storm a hill. They had the French hold down my right. They didn't give me a chance to use my firepower and strength. They just came right up on me. Now, here's the problem. There's a bit of a drawback in the strategy. Charging is a very tiresome affair. And as you can see, I'm going to try to countercharge as well. I'm not going to let them get anything for free. But by charging and countercharging and moving up aggressively, they are wearing their own troops out. These cuirassiers that they had, the Polish cuirassiers, are now tired. That's a pretty bad debuff in their ability to fight a battle. These cuirassiers are tired. He's got 2 units of tired and winded and very tired lancers and Imperial Guard. These lancers are winded. The cavalry has done excellent work, but now it's just starting to get the better of them. Good square by the foot, just in the nick of time. But now the infantry is forming up. Just so much going on here, it's incredible. Zoom out for a second. So I'll pause the game. Let's pause for just a minute. The line of the Allied line basically goes starting about here, curls this way, the front of it goes this way, and then it starts jutting back. Jutting back. And you can see the problem. Look at the French line. This is the French line. Boom. It's in the flag deployment. It's in the flag placement on the map. The Poles are in the middle of our line. And they're not just, here. Oh, they're not just here casually. They're here in the middle of the line. They've taken the hill. My battery was here. Now it's not. My other battery was, where was it? I gotta find where the cavalry... Oh, yeah, here we go. It was here. Now it's not. Our position has been really crumpled in on the right, and judging from this situation, the Polish army has a really significant offensive going on. And Roland, who's the Polish general, is doing a very good job using combined arms tactics, throwing cavalry into the center, forcing us to square, and then closing in with infantry to support to whittle us down. And we're not able to really get back. And this is my mistake. I put my guns too far forward. If I had a battery here, and then I had another battery, say, I don't know, maybe had, in reserve maybe, put it here perhaps, Maybe if I had a line here and I put stakes in front of this gun, and I just held this hill with infantry only and didn't have the weakness in the line of the artillery, maybe I would have been all right. But I had all of my stuff here. I was totally committed to this position. And he was basically able to come up and swamp me with the help of the French, because now the British finally are online, but my army's thrown into disarray. I'm totally disorganized. I've lost my battery. I still have a gun crew of 14 guys, but they don't have a cannon to fire, so what's the point? And I'm all over. I'm totally I am disordered by definition. I am totally disordered. And it's not even solved yet, because there's still Polish cuirassiers in the middle of my line. They're actively hacking away at the Lusitanians. This is a bad spot for me to be in. I'm in a very bad spot.
Our men are running, sir.
Now this is good. As I've said, routing is not a terrible thing, as long as they don't get shattered, because you can route back far enough to where they're actually in a good position. So sometimes your troops routing kind of saves their ass a little bit. Now, a bit of a danger moment, because my general gets caught out a little bit by some cuirassier, but he's alright. I do unfortunately charge my own cazadores in the rear, killing a lot of them, but a lot of micro mistakes on my part. Meanwhile, very gentlemanly engagement between the Spanish and the French on this flank. Albuera, very securely held by the Spanish. Guitarra's Musketeer Battalion on the right of it, Spanish Marines to the left of it, and the square of the Guitarra is holding the line. Bit of a juncture here. This is a very fascinating position. They are firing to the right, shooting at the Light Infantry Battalion, while at the same time shooting across the river at the French Fusiliers. Quite seriously, by definition, the corner of the line. Now, the British player is in a very precarious spot here. And the reason I say that is because the French player has strength and cavalry. And what needs to happen for the French player to win? Oh man, let's watch this volley. I'll stop talking for a second. Wow. What needs to happen for the French player is they need to fall upon the British in a bayonet charge, and they'll probably win. But the British can retreat across this river and complicate that. And also, they're winning this firefight. Now, there's a slight misplay on the side of the French player. They have their old guard committed into the line. This is a very expensive unit to have committed into a firefight. They are going to move forward, but the British player, smartly, is going to retreat backwards, not giving the French the opportunity to charge him in the back. And I'm basically put to flight at this moment. My army is beginning to stop existing. I'm just getting repeatedly charged by the Poles, but you're beginning to see the cracks in the offensive strategy. Yes, they're routing my army, but his stuff is tired. Very tired. Active, good, fresh, good. Okay, look at this. 89 out of 250 men, winded. Attrition is pretty high on the Polish army side, and yeah, look, they've captured all this ground, and they're really routing me. They're winning this fight. They're beating the Portuguese without a doubt. But the question is will they have the strength to win the fight later in the battle? You can rout one army, but there's still two others, and not for nothing, but Dan, who's the Spanish player on the left, really handling his defense here. The French are trying to attack at all points of his line, even mounting an attempt at a bayonet charge on the Spanish 9-pound battery, and they're going to get right up to it and get nailed by canister. Whoa, look at that hole, Jesus. So despite attempting this, they're going to get caught out. Now, there is a funny moment here where the Spanish guerrilla cavalry catches out Marshal Soult. Soult gets headed off, mercilessly hunted by the Chasseur Regiment. Bit of a glitch here with the NTW collision, but they do get caught by the square. But Soult doesn't make it into the square. There he is. Soult gets caught outside the square and is killed by the Olivenza Chasseur Regiment of Cavalry. I'd like to imagine in this moment of the battle that Soult was injured grievously and is on the ground and, oh, he's got his eyes wide open. Wow, that is a terrifying image. Jesus. I'd like to imagine that Soult is on the ground. He's got this Hibernian regiment nearby. They're looking at his body. They can't tell if he's dead or alive, injured, unconscious, whatever, and they're going to run out, grab his body, pull him in while the cavalry threat's there, while his general staff is trying to secure whatever life he has left, and they're going to drag him inside the square and get him off the battlefield in an ambulance. And the order is going to be given to not tell the troops. Meanwhile, a rider in my head comes over and arrives in Marshal Ney's general staff and tells him that he is now head of the French assault on the enemy. That's at least how it would go in my head. Now, I know historically, I believe Ney was more valued to Napoleon than Soult, but historically, Soult was in supreme command of the French in this battle, if I'm correct. So, technically, Soult was the supreme commander in this scenario. Wow. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the aesthetics. Wow, these men just getting hit, falling out of line. Jesus. What an incredible sight. It is so difficult to not pause and just enjoy the insanity that is this style of warfare. The chaos, it looks so organized and put together when you consider how the regiments were organized and the linear style of warfare, you know, keeping formation and whatnot. And then you just do this where you give yourself a moment to breathe and really look around and appreciate that at the end of the day, yeah, okay, there is an order to all of this. There is a plan. There is a strategic situation unfolding in front of us. But all of these are people who are shitting their pants in varying degrees, trying to survive the day to get home. Trying to win a war, really. It's really makes you happy that you live in the day you do and you have air conditioning, you know? Oh, yeah, French cavalry got into the rear and were routed by the KGL Dragoons in a mass rout. Yeah. KGL Dragoons routing 2 squares and now 2 squadrons of French cavalry. Now, while we're here, there's a strategic reposition which happens at this stage of the battle. The Poles have won the hill. We're not going to hold that. If we stay there, the Poles are going to tear us up, and they're going to stay in melee. Look, they're still piling in reserves of lancers. The Polish cavalry horde never ends, and they are going to continue to plow into us, finally taking down the remainder of the Spanish hussars. We will take this as our opportunity to get the hell out of Dodge. We're going to try to deploy this 9-pound battery in and fire canister. It's a race against the clock. British player redeploys his right. He still has cavalry, squadron of KGL Dragoons to the right. Picton's still alive. There is quite a lot going on. The British have retreated across this riverbank, and they're going to force the French to come across it. Now, there's a bit of a misplay here, which is the British player should have had a bit thinner lines. I think he could have extended a little more, gotten more firepower out. These grenadiers totally fresh on the left. Oh, man, so many troops. But you could see the way the battle is going, that our line has been totally caved in. We've had to retreat with whatever we had left. My army is still here, but wow, vastly diminished. Can we get off a shot before they get in? And unfortunately, the battery was unloaded. I tried to save it. I charged in my militia unit. I tried to save it. If anything, I wanted to save the foot regiment. I tried to save the battery, but it's just nothing you can do. Polish ferocity. Slamming into him. Now the British player is going to give ground a little bit. French do get across this river. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make as much of a defense across it as it would have been good to. But it was better to be deployed in a defensive arrangement in cohesion with one another than to be outflanked. Now, here's the thing. Cuirassiers are in the rear, and the British player is moving to kill him off with a rear charge Picton's nearby. There's a thing here that's important to remember, which is this is 1 point. Before we get lost in this combat, by the way, you can notice the French diversion attack on the left has been totally pushed off. Now, granted, it was never the main thrust, but it pinned. Look at how many battalions of Spanish infantry were pinned. Arguably half the Spanish army was pinned on the left flank, unable to reinforce the right. You can see the Poles beginning to stall a little bit in their assault. The French finally now are becoming the main offensive arm of the Imperial Army.
Sir, your general...
Oh, I forgot my general was killed by a stray ball. Yeah, that wasn't good. So, yeah, the Portuguese army begins shitting its pants collectively because the general dies. But anyway, the point I wanted to get at here is this is Albuera, this is 1 point. This is the 2nd point. We started the line of battle here. Now we've been pushed back to here. We can do a hold on this road and hold this point, but we're starting to run out of ground to hold our 2 points. And this is a lot of French infantry, and this is a pretty consistent problem with the British Army. Wow, that's a crazy shot. Jesus. I'm trying to get an angle here. Here we go. This is a pretty consistent problem with the British Army, right? It's a small army. It's professional. It's good. Very well drilled. Expensive infantry. They damn well know what they're doing. But they don't have the bodies to really deal with this sort of, massed attack. The French are not overextending, but they're extending over the British line. And the British line is keeping to a relatively dense 3 ranks. There's a bit of an ironic situation here where the French are doing thinner 2-rank firing lines than the British. But they're still outflanking the British. Meanwhile, my line has been engaged by the remnants of the Polish cavalry. He's punching a breakthrough, is what he's doing. I'm trying to form square. Trying to form square as quick as I can. I don't get it.
Our men are running, sir.
The Polish army punching a hole. Finally, the breakthrough occurs. Now is the moment of supreme danger for the Allied army. See the general popping a rally to really hammer home the offensive thrust here. I'm trying to retreat whatever I have back. I just want to have some army by the end of this. I've even managed to keep 14 gunners alive from that 9-pound battery I retreated. But now it really is coming on to what can the Spanish do to hold the French back and at the same time defend against the Poles. Meanwhile, the Brits have to keep giving ground to prevent being overwhelmed by the French. They cannot let themselves be caught out by the French. I'm gone, though. There is now a hole in our lines. Polish cavalry is pouring through. They are being caught out by some small arms fire from the Spanish, but there is very significant danger here. Now, there is a huge problem. Huge problem. Albuera is now isolated, in danger of being encircled, but there's a critical mistake in judgment on the Polish player's side. Right now, let's analyze the situation. You're the Polish player. You've just finally punched your breakthrough. Where do you go? Do you go right onto Albuera, or do you fall left and help mop up the British? What do you do? Look at the status of these units. This battalion of light infantry is basically non-existent. This one, if you were to combine these two units, you'd have half of a unit. And they're both not at optimal energy. They're both fatigued. This unit, heavily attrited, also heavily fatigued. This unit, relatively fresh. This reserve second line regiment. This line regiment, acceptable casualties. This unit, 50% depleted, very tired. This one, 50% depleted, winded. This one more than 50% depleted, but fresh. This reserve, fresh. And this one depleted as all heck and getting fatigued. You have some fresh reserves to commit to the fight, but you don't have much. And most of your army is not up to fight right now. Your cavalry are tired. He's got Lancers and Imperial Guard cavalry up ahead. They're both tired. They're exhausted. He's got this unit up here. They're in fighting trim, but they're very tired. The Polish are running out of gas. They don't have the punch power to continue another major offensive right in this moment. What needs to happen for success in this moment is there needs to be a major offensive into this town. But it's just, I don't know if it's possible, and I'll tell you why. Look at all of the Spanish reinforcement coming by. They have grenadiers, they have artillery off in the distance capable of shooting. There's British cavalry that can be committed. The French are effectively not going to be able to make a major offensive on this flank because they just don't have the numbers for it. They have grenadiers in here, the generals nearby. The weak spot in the Spanish line is arguably this road, but look at the troops that are there. You've only really got this regiment here, and do you really want to run this regiment straight up the center with these reserves coming in? That's an overextension. I don't know if it's the best idea to attack the town right now. I would say the error in judgment, and this is a really big error from the Polish player's perspective, is they go for the town versus mopping up here. And here's my argument for why mopping up the British and the rest of my army is the better idea versus this town. Yes, this is the objective, and this game is about fighting for an objective. But you can't secure an objective, A, while the enemy army holds it, and B, while you're technically overextended in a hole in the enemy's line, while roughly half of the enemy are still alive. If you look at this assessment, now we're lucky because hindsight is 2020. We have the ability to pause the game and look at this and think about what we should do. But look at it from the perspective of this left French player. They have cavalry presence, not superiority, but, they've got infantry superiority. The British look relatively disorganized. They're close, too. My general's dead. I'm weak. I'm barely holding my side. The French on this side are in a far better fighting position with reserves of conscripts, and their general's alive. The French on this side are in a far better spot than this French player is. This French player should have pulled off by now. And started feeding men left, crossing back over here, pulling his line back and going this way. But that's not, too important. But the point is to say, this is not the best area to support right now. If the Polish army had instead turned left coincidentally at this crossroads, turn left, fallen upon the rest of my army and killed it, the British player would have nowhere to go. He would have to retreat this way. That would force the British totally off of the point, leaving Albuera isolated, and the French probably could have caught him out. If he charged in, yes, the British cavalry's here, but he could have handled it throwing these two units in. There's still a freaking third unit of cuirassiers. This British cavalry could have been totally held and annihilated. What I'm proposing is this solution. The Polish general should have turned left, fallen on the rest of the Portuguese. The French could have committed, and then after routing me, the Polish could have just rolled up the British left, caught them out, and that would have been the game right there, because if you can knock out the Brits with a swift blow, killing their cavalry with your cuirassier, getting their infantry with a flank turn, that will let you take your time and plan an assault on the town. There's a very critical mistake about to happen, and you're going to see it. He deploys to the right. And this is where things start getting pear-shaped for the Poles. I'm given time to reform my line. I'm able to force the Polish player to defend both ways. I'm able to do a bayonet charge on this Italian unit and buy the British player some time. I can consolidate a little bit, and my army escapes, basically. Tried to charge in and help my beleaguered unit here, but it was not meant to be. Now I will rout a little bit, but the key thing to remember here is I'm not being pursued. The Poles are going to go right. And look, again, here's the Spanish reserves coming online to thwart that sort of an advance. And you'd think, oh, well, the Poles have superiority here. Yeah, but look, winded, tired. There's British cavalry nearby. Winded, fresh. Even more units. There's artillery nearby. There's this square of Fusiliers. The Poles are in the minority here, and this is going to be a massive problem. Not turning left at this crossroads, but turning right
The men are fatigued, sir.
really does a number on the Poles, because now they're going to be overextended. Could never get a square on time. This game was a game of squares failing me. Now, there is a moment where the British player does get caught out here. Unfortunately, he does commit his cavalry, which does save him a little bit because it buys him time to get out. It forces the French right to square, buys him precious moments to redeploy, get some musketry off, keep pouring casualties into the enemy. Some of my troops do come back. I do manage to save a brigade. But look at what could have possibly have been if the Poles had simply gone to my left. Now the Polish general is being caught out by some KGL Dragoons. Their Lancers are being charged in the rear. The Spaniards are coming online, really just raking these lines ragged. Now this is the problem. You got an exhausted unit running. Very tired Polish Legion line. Very tired line. British player is holding his ground. Again, getting critical time to give casualties to the French. I'm able to deploy, and what I'm able to do, because he didn't kill me, is I can help apply a bit of a flank debuff with morale to the Poles. Square has been broken by KGL. I didn't notice that before, actually. That's wild. But yeah, look at this. Look at this. Yeah, General Staff routes because he suffers too many casualties. Because he's routing, there's going to be a morale debuff. Watch. Polish Legion routes. KGL Dragoons are now free and open. They're going to try to break a second square. But they're going to pull off. I'm able to get into the rear of the Polish line. Deliver a volley. That's going to cause that square to rout because that volley combined with this Fusilier regiment causes a rout. That causes that unit to rout. Then we have a chain rout where the entire Polish left breaks. They overextended. The general runs away. He rallies, but by now he's too far away. There's going to be a major contraction. Hundreds of men that could have been used to turn this flank are now going to run off the field. That misplay happened at a critical moment in the battle. Sometimes winning a battle comes down to deciding if you should turn left or go right. You can't write this. Sometimes it really is that simple. And in this moment, the decision to go right rather than left leaves the British player alive. He is going to get caught out, but watch. You're going to see something where imagine if the Polish army that was here was on the British left. How different what you're about to see could have been. It's not good for the Brits what's about to happen. He sees it, but too late. His cuirassiers aren't going for the infantry. They're not worried about that. They got a bigger eye. A bigger prize on eye of the prize. They got Picton in their sights. He's going to try to get this foot unit in the way. but it's too little too late. Picton gets picked out, you might say. He's now face-to-face with a cuirassier. Squirt Waterloo, you'll be lucky to have your life. And there's the other squadron of cuirassier. The French have the maneuver element. Now there's a major offensive going on. Too many things. British are trying to retreat. Picton's caught in the rear as well as the front by 2 squadrons of cuirassier. More than 100 cuirassier have descended upon him. 88th Connaught Rangers are trying to form a square to fend off a charge by grenadiers and fusiliers, trying to buy time for the right flank of the army alongside this foot regiment. Now, imagine how different this would have gone. There's 2 brigades worth of infantry escaping, including a brigade of Portuguese infantry escaping, and a gun crew escaping back to Albuera. The survivors are able to get out of here and go reinforce the Spanish right. Yeah, the French have won here, for sure, and they're pushing us off. But look what happens. Look at what's happened. At a strategic scale, yes, the French are going to push us off here. Yes, they're going to create a situation where they're going to control this house because, look, if the line is retreating to here and the French walk to here, they will control, what the hell is this, Casa del Conde? Yes. However, consider the following. The enemy is going to be routed relatively soon from this side of the battlefield. That means, if you look at where the lines are, technically, the French house... Where is it? Where is it? Oh, where are you? Come here. Where are you at? Where's the French house? The French house... Oh, where is it? Here we go. This French house is going to be behind our line momentarily. Because if the Poles condense that way, and we have only our units that are not routing on this side, all we've done is rotated the axis of the battle. As I said before, I think the Imperial side was winning this battle until there was this one fateful moment of decision. And I'm not pinning the loss on the Polish player side. There were a lot, on the Polish player's decision-making process, there were a lot of moments in this battle where certain decisions could have added up to have changed the dynamic. Maybe if this French player didn't try to come over open ground like this, and instead maybe reinforced a little more on his left flank to support the Polish player's assault of this hill, maybe that would have changed things a little bit more. Maybe if this French player had engaged the British a little more aggressively, maybe that would have changed things a little bit more. But unfortunately, the one decision, in my mind, the one decision with all those critiques being said, the one decision that could have changed this game and made it an Imperial win is if the Poles at this crossroad had turned left. But they did not. And here we are. What happened is the British now were able to be caught out. Were caught out by a French assault, a very well-executed French daring assault, using their cavalry to sneak around the British lines through the gaps in our lines and nail Picton. And Picton dies a hero's death, or was about to die a hero's death. Where is he? We'll watch him. We'll come back to him. There he is, face-to-face with a cuirassier, right as a 88th, or as a foot regiment. Oh, man, just gets nailed. That might be the buffs, judging by that facing. Anyway, yeah, Picton's about to become skewered by cuirassier. But if the Poles were here, they could have caught out the British left and totally annihilated it. And now the British player is able to escape with 100, 180 guys roughly, about almost 400, almost 500, a little over 500 British soldiers are able to walk out of this engagement, as well as roughly about 370 Portuguese infantrymen. There's a little under 1,000 men walking out of this engagement. That's a substantial force to preserve to the end of the battle like this. Anyway, let's press play. Now, the Polish player does get some units back here. That was the death of Picton. Killed by a cuirassier. I said we were going to go back. We missed it. My apologies. It was a moment in time. It was not meant for our eyes. But needless to say, Picton died. KGL Dragoons fighting to the last. 2 chevrons, very tired. Fighting exhausted cuirassier, though. But as you can see, we just got to sacrifice units to stem the horde. So the French really do nail this side, and they have numerical superiority. Now, it's at this moment... Poles came back here as Stanislaus, Pataki, light infantry, but it's not, they're in a route because they're in a weird spot, so we won't be paying attention to them. But yes, I do know they're here, but they will not be here for long, so we'll ignore that unit. The only living general on the Allied side is Hoyes. Spaniards will try to break the enemy with a bayonet charge. Not really get too far. The Spaniards are not that good at the bayonet charge, as you can see. The strategic situation is the Polish hold this hill. The Spaniards formed the bulk of the army under Hoyes. There's a brigade left of Portuguese infantry, rather good, and rather substantial troops as well. And then there's basically the tattered remnants of 2 brigades worth of British troops, and they will form the extreme right. However, there's still 1, 2, 3 squadrons of French cuirassiers under Ney. So how are they going to get this town? Well, they've got to beat us. However, the Spanish 9-pounder, here to the end. Now, there's a moment of macro here, where I realize I have a very important unit left. No, it's not the line infantry. No, it's not the 6th Regiment of Grenadiers. It is this unit of 11 gunners of my 9-pound battery that I saved right to the end of the game. So I says to Dan, I says, do you see those Polish men up there? I says. He says, well, yes, I do. I says, well, they have our guns. It would be nice to get those back, wouldn't it? And he says, why? Franz, yes, it would. So the whole Spanish army basically just begins walking forward. And due to the massive morale debuff of the enemy presence, you'll see what happens. But we begin playing basically Diablo 3, where we're micromanaging quite seriously 9 men to get a second gun battery. And this is the value of force preservation. Never assume because a gun is being overwhelmed by the enemy that the crew are worthless. You hold on to the crew as long as you can, and you'll see why. This comes in handy later. But you can see we're stepping off to try to break the enemy. Our logic is this. If we have Hoyes nearby, yes, maybe they've got the defensive position. Enemy are attacking uphill across the creek, but we have the morale advantage and they're in a thin line. We'll take casualties, but damn it, it's worth it. French feverishly loading their muskets to prepare for this onslaught. Oh, so cinematic. Meanwhile, on the right, British getting enveloped. French cavalry swinging around. Potential misplay here. It possibly would have been better for the French player to instead use this cavalry to, again, force the British to form square. But instead, he gets a little bit of a charge of the light brigade on. Meanwhile, on the left, the threat of the push of bayonet from the Saragossa Legion and the Marines induces a rout on this side, and my 9-pound gun crew is able to march forward with possibly the most secure bodyguard ever and reclaim the guns they lost so many minutes ago on this fateful day. Meanwhile, over here on the right, a bit of a panic moment for our 9-pound battery as about 100 and change cuirassiers begin to descend upon them, about 150 cuirassiers. By now, 3 chevrons. Woo. I hope they can load fast. Meanwhile, my gun crew is beginning to march back to its position. I'm beginning to rout. Some of the French cavalry's come back to the rear, and they are forcing a square. Fortunately, the French player does not follow through with a bayonet charge with Ney nearby, so he does lose the opportunity to catch this unit of foot. But he does induce a rout in the center of our line, So is it really that much of a loss? Meanwhile, over here, Cuirassier being mowed down. Oh, I forgot about this part. I was wrong. My apologies to the French player. He does rout the rest of that. However, the time it took to get this cavalry online has given the battery time to reload. Oh, man. That's a lot of dead heavy cavalry. Well, that's what we would call in my world a whiff of grape shot. And this last squadron of Cuirassier is understandably not enthusiastic about charging that 9-pound battery. Meanwhile, my gun crew has finally arrived back on their position. Picking up their ramrods, picking up their sponges and worms, getting back to the drive. And they're going to turn their guns onto that enemy line. Let's watch. Look over here. Oh, Jesus. And that's a rout. That's all she wrote. That's the value of having that one gun. Jesus. Oh, man. That was a lot. Well, anyway. Yeah. That really seals the deal. So with the push of that bayonet, remember what I said earlier? By routing this side of the battle, we've inverted the axis of the engagement. Now we still, even though they've captured our 1 point back here, this is decidedly French. This 1 point here, it's in line with their army. You could say the artillery's here, but if you draw a straight line, it's behind their line. Likewise, their 1 pointer back here is now behind our line. So we've just traded victory points effectively. We have artillery, we have our infantry support, we have a general. Now comes a strange moment in the battle, where I don't think anyone really knew what to do, because the British are still fighting a retreat. They're trying to get out. Oh, slowly but surely. The 9-pound battery was still kicking, I forgot. Yeah, yep, finally that Cuirassier unit. Yeah, 3 casualties from cannon. My God. This was just insane watching this cavalry charge up this road. Oh, man, wow. Pfft, they got right up to the gun. Oh, no, those are the limbers. Those are the limbers, wow. All 4 limbers shot out by counter battery. And small arms fire, Jesus. They did not go quietly into that good night. Hoya is moving over to my side to ensure the battery stays, because this battery basically is watching that ridgeline. We'd moved all of our troops back to give them the high ground. We wanted them to silhouette themselves against the high ground so we could shoot at them with cannon. Where does that ball land? Oh, LOL. Yeah, this is going to be a difficult situation for the French, because they are now attacking a position with 2 guns positioned to either flank on points of elevation, giving a deadly crossfire to this position. This 9-pound battery has a perfect enfilade on this side. This 9-pound battery has a great shot on this ridge line, anything that silhouettes above it. At this point, we know we've won. It's just cinematic as all hell. The old guard walking into the last. The last Portuguese regiment, I should say, holding the front of the house with the 6th Regiment of Grenadiers to the right. Not giving a goddamn inch. Oh man, that final bayonet charge. Oh, that artillery, the uninflated artillery breaking up the assault. Conscript volley and then charge. Old Guard being brave as a mother. Whoa. Hoya is running over to stabilize the lines. Unfortunately, as much as I'd love to say my men fought to the death, my infantry finally broke and routed off the field, with the exception of the 6th Infantry Regiment Grenadiers holding the right flank to the very frickin' end. Whoa, that was a musket ball that just went right through the screen. Crazy. And that was it. That was it. What a fantastic battle. This, we all agreed after we fought this was one of the coolest engagements we had fought in quite a while. My entire team was a ton of fun to be with. The French team, the Imperial team, it's really, as strange as this is going to sound saying it, it is a pleasure to fight opponents that really put you on the back foot like that and basically beat you, you know? Like, I consider myself reasonably good at this game, and there are definitely players who are better than me, for sure. But it's really cool to be in that hot seat once in a while, you know? Like, all of my videos, as you see, even in this one, I always talk about players and the mistakes they've made and what I think they should do better, what I think they should have done, what they should not have done. And in this video, you saw me be in a position where the gas was turned all the way up. I had a very forward deployment zone against 2 very aggressive players without reinforcement for a good long while, and I paid very dearly for it. And I made a lot of mistakes in my defensive positioning. I learned a lot. So it just goes to show you, you know, like, just because someone runs a YouTube channel doesn't mean that they're the best at a game. They'll lose just like other people will. And you know, I like being humanized like this. You know, I think showing my army being beaten to a pulp kind of shows you that I'm just a guy who likes to watch this game and do some commentary. But it really was an awesome fight. Let's look at the numbers here before we get out of here. We're at this video's gone on long enough. Let's get right to the end of it. So, looking at the numbers, let's compare our army sizes. How big was the Allied army? Well, I'll tell you, it was 3,328 Spaniards plus 3,478 Portuguese plus 2,762 Brits. We are at 9,500 men. We didn't even hit 10,000 men. We didn't even hit 5 digits. This was a 4-digit army. 9,568 men on the coalition side. The French, meanwhile, undoubtedly had more, probably substantially more. Let's see. 3,378 plus 3,458. Oh, yeah, they definitely had more. We had, so the coalition side had 9,568. The French side, the Imperial side, had 10,768. So we were outnumbered by about, mathematically, on the nose, 1,200 men. So if you do the math, 1,200 men divided by 9,568. Wow, that was a pretty substantial difference in force. Jesus. The French team, the Imperial team, had 12.5% more men. That is a pretty substantial difference in manpower. I don't cite that statistic to say they sucked. I lost my part of the battle. I was the center of the line, and the center was dissolved. So I am not one to gloat over the enemy being bad. What I am saying is, it says a lot about how difficult it is to attack. And when you have players that are as non-committal to a frontal engagement as we are, with the British fighting a retreat constantly over that hour of gameplay, with the Spaniards basically causing the French to extend their lines across that field to attack the whole town, preserving their force and placing their guns in strong positions, firing canister at the enemy, killing off cavalry canister. Even my army, as you could see, I definitely did not do that well. I killed more than the British did, but, I took a significant chunk of their army out. I killed 1,600 and change men, almost 1,700 men. In an army of 10,000 and change, you do the math, I roughly killed about 16.2-ish% of the enemy army just by being that speed bump. That's a pretty significant loss in manpower. So this was a very desperate fight. From the beginning to the very end, it was an exceptionally well-fought battle. And to be honest with you, I wish I could show you only these kinds of battles. Because this type of fight is one where everyone walks out of it feeling like they had a hell of a time. The Imperial team lost the battle ultimately, but all of us got into the main Discord channel after that and we're like, holy shit, that was friggin' awesome. Everyone had a good time. It was a great fight, and I hope to have another one like this soon. Anyway, this video has gone on for long enough. My name is Franz Calamari. This is Napoleon Total War Darthmod Hardcore Realism. The map was the Battle of Albuera, an NTW3 map. And thank you for watching. Stay safe. Get vaccinated. Get your booster shot if you haven't gotten already. Stay hydrated and get enough sleep. I'll see you around.